Hey, is it live now? Hello! Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. So glad to see so many of you here for the July live stream. Thank you all for being accepting that I'm only doing one of these a month now. Yes, of the usual suspects right now, yeah, we are missing Welt Fenos. Where are you? Anyways, hello everyone. Happy Pride! Yesterday was Autistic Pride. I didn't do anything about that because I was tired and busy. But yes. Oh, and to all of my American fans, happy Juneteenth. Since I already did a live stream on autism and the LGBTQ plus community, I wanted, a different pride related topic to talk about. So this time I'll be talking about the disabled queer community as a whole instead of just the autistic queer community. Being queer can be hard enough in a non-accepting world, but being disabled and queer just makes it harder. Not only do you have to deal with homophobia and or transphobia, you also have to deal with ableism, sometimes even from the queer community itself. Yes, welcome back, Juanette. I too am a fan of Earthbound. What some people may not realize is that the disabled queer community is pretty large. In the US, there was a poll done that showed that 40% of trans adults are disabled. Also, 30% of cis non straight men and 36% of cis non straight women are disabled. This is compared to, the 27% of the general population that's disabled. In a previous live stream I did on autism and LGBTQ, I went over how autistic people are far more likely to be queer. With such a large number of disabled queer people, you'd think that we'd be a recognized group of the queer community, but we're not. We're often looked over. Disabled queer people are fighting for equal rights on two fronts: equal rights as disabled people and equal rights as queer people. With so many of us being a part of queer activism, it seems odd that we'd be so ignored. One issue that we face within the queer community is we're often seen as disabled and nothing else. We're not allowed to have genders or sexualities. The thought that a disabled person might have a sex life can make some people feel uncomfortable. And honestly, their discomfort about that makes me uncomfortable. I'm an adult, and a requirement of interacting with me is that you treat me as such. A big part of being in the queer community is being proud of your gender and or sexuality. But by being disabled, we're denied that. A big hurdle that people with intellectual disabilities have to face is others not thinking they can actually consent to sex or even conceptualize gender. There was a story about a couple with intellectual disabilities that had to fight to get married and live together in a group home as a married couple, even though barring them from that was a violation of their rights. Because people didn't think of them as adults who could consent to such a relationship. And this was a straight couple. Queer couples have even more hurdles to face. It's this inability for people to see disabled people as more than just our disabilities that leads to a lot of discrimination and ableism within the queer community. I find it odd that this is the case, since Marsha P. Johnson, the black trans woman who had a big role in the Stonewall riots in June 1969 and was very active in the fight for queer rights, was disabled. She's celebrated whenever people talk about the history of Pride. But the fact that she was both physically and psychologically disabled, as she put it, is so often omitted. This is common with disabled queer historical figures. Their queerness is celebrated, but their disability is strangely never mentioned. Places that are seen as safe spaces for queer individuals can often be inaccessible to disabled people, including at Pride events, which I'll get into in the next section. Queer spaces are sometimes the only places queer people can be themselves without fear of violence. But when disabled queer people can't use these spaces, what options do we have? Andrew Gurza, a disabled awareness consultant, was quoted as saying, "Queer spaces tout this ideology of equality for everyone. It is more vitally important for them to become accessible first than anywhere else. If they show some effort in this area, disabled people would feel like they had a place to be safe." And I agree with that quote. Gurza was filmed in the documentary called Picture This, which is about disability and sexuality. Footage that was left out of the film was of Gurza in his power chair at the bottom of a flight of stairs into a gay bar. That flight of stairs was the only way to the entrance. The bar owner got upset that Gurza and the film crew at them because he felt that it reflected poorly on the bar. Gurza said that if you ask people why their venues or events aren't accessible, you get called a bully and are accused of harassment. Pointing out ableism within safe spaces can lead to negative repercussions for said safe spaces, which can then lead to the one who pointed it out in the first place becoming the villain of the whole situation. Because of this, disabled queer people are forced to decide if it's worth demanding our rights or to just stay quiet and not rock the boat. Asking for accessibility in queer spaces can make us look to others like we're attacking queer spaces, when in reality, we just want to enjoy them like everyone else. Of course, just because queer spaces are physically accessible to disabled people doesn't mean they're safe spaces for us. Once you're in, you have to deal with the ableism of everyone else there. Accessible doesn't equate accepted. Yes, Gerza also has a book, as Emily said, The Handy Guide to Love, Lust, and Disability. Oh, and a podcast, Disability After Dark. Cool. You should check out his work. Let's see. Emily also said Andrew Gerza on Twitter and Instagram is an interesting activist who speaks frequently on disability and sexuality, and also the ableism of the LGBTQ plus community. Yeah. I did learn a little bit about him while researching this, but yeah, he should look more into him, or at least just follow him on Twitter. He seems like an interesting person. Yeah, I want to imagine caring more about your bar's image than the amount of customers you can get in the place.
Now, that's where one thing is kind of disappointing. Image does equate to the number of customers you can get into a place in a lot of realities. So it's a frustrating pile of twisty. Insert a bad word I don't want to say here because, YouTube doesn't like that.
Alrighty. So, before the pandemic hit, and most Pride events were in person, there was a group of people that were often absent. Disabled people. Pride primarily consists of parties and parades. Loud, flashy, crowded parties that take place in bars with no ramps or elevators for people who can't use stairs, or strobe lights that can set off seizures. Also, with them taking place in bars, that cuts out minors. Then there are the parades with powerful, emotional speeches without any sign language interpreters, and long routes that sometimes include rough or even inaccessible terrain. Neurodivergent people, deaf or hard of hearing people, blind people, people with intellectual disabilities, and so many more aren't able to join in with the celebration because said celebrations are too inaccessible. Such a large group of the queer community are excluded, and nothing is ever really done about it. In 2018, at the Stonewall Inn of the famous Stonewall riots that started Pride in the first place, denied entry to Lynn Zalvin, a blind woman and her service dog, because she didn't present any papers for her service dog, which is actually illegal for businesses to demand. Dominic Evans, a trans and hard of hearing filmmaker, said in an interview in 2019 that he had heard of disabled people getting knocked down, stepped over, or had people lean on their wheelchairs. He said that people will just stand in your way and you will be stuck. He described it as a real lack of bodily autonomy and a whole lot of rudeness. Performances will be put on, and there most likely won't be any disability seating area or even accessible stages, meaning that disabled people can neither watch nor perform. Also keep in mind that Pride takes place in the summer. That excludes those who can't handle the heat or the sun for too long. There are just so many roadblocks showing disabled people that they aren't welcome at Pride. The organizers and planners don't think about disabled people, and if they do, it's often as an afterthought. We're simply an inconvenience to them. It's isolating to be a member of the queer community but not able to join in on the celebration because no one thought to make it accessible to people like us. I've been, Emily, at Toronto Pride 2019, one of my roommates had their wheelchair shoved out of the way without even a warning by a stranger. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I know who you're talking about, and I wish to yell at this person on their behalf. Oh my gosh.
Pardon me, but my reaction to that situation is... By the way, we're referring to a comment Emily made in the chat.
Yes. So I've been to 2 Pride parades. One was in, I think, 2018. Was it 2017 or 2018? The first one with your mom.
2018.
It was 18, and the other was 2019. This was back when I was able to get back to Canada during summer break. These weren't gigantic parades. The city was a population, or it has a population, of a little over 400,000. So we're not talking like New York or Toronto style parades. And yet I was still overwhelmed both times. They had a friend with them who certainly did chew the guy out, but they were really shaken for the rest of the day. I can imagine. So with the Pride parades I went to, the second one, I actually went full on non-speaking. Had I not had my partner and amazing mother-in-law there with me, I worry I could have had a full-on meltdown. And it's like, then what? It's also not just disabled people who miss out when they can't attend Pride events. It's also the queer community as a whole. They miss out on the diversity, our opinions, our worldviews, and our ideas. There's so many brilliant, creative, and all-around amazing disabled people in the queer community that aren't having their voices heard, their ideas shared. Not only can having disabled people on the Pride boards and organization committees make Pride more accessible, but it can also show abled and neurotypical people what we need, and they can take that information and use it in the future. Maybe they'll be more aware the next time they notice that something is inaccessible, something that they may not have noticed before, and realize that so much of the world is not accessible, and work with us to try and fix it. When inequality remains hidden, it's harder for others to see that it actually exists. Believe it or not, the COVID lockdown actually made COVID more accessible. Now, please don't mistake me for saying that COVID is a good thing. It really isn't. I'm just pointing out a very small silver lining to this whole horrid situation. During June of 2020, Pride wholly took place online. It became a virtual celebration. And this had a very positive effect on the disabled queer community. we could participate. By removing the physical, communication, and sensory barriers, because Pride became accessible to many more people for the very first time. I see that was a pretty awesome way to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Pride. I'm really hoping that as we move forward, accessibility is seen as a need instead of an afterthought. People who were never able to attend Pride events were finally able to join the queer community in celebration. Their one and only time they could do that just isn't acceptable. We need to think past parades and parties when it comes to Pride. Not all Pride events have to be loud or involve walking or even have alcohol. What about a Pride picnic or a Pride movie night? I don't know. A Pride block party, whatever. Just something that everyone can attend. Something that Pride should have already had to begin with is accessibility coordinators. A person that someone can contact to request needed accommodations. Even events much smaller than Pride have accessibility coordinators. So why not Pride? Disabled people got to participate in 1 year of Pride, and we deserve many, many more. Honestly, even future virtual events can be more accessible. I can't imagine that every live stream had live captioning or sign language interpreters, and I'm sure there were videos shown with flashing or strobing lights. Virtual Pride events should continue to happen, and they should be able to be attended by everyone. Also, big Pride events should be live streamed so that even those who can't make it can still participate in a way. We should work towards normalizing virtual events alongside in-person events. And virtual events don't just help disabled people. They help people who can't attend in person because they're too scared to display their gender or sexuality publicly due to unsupportive people in their lives. Or have small children can't afford childcare. Or people who feel uncomfortable in the presence of the police. While many people fight back against cops attending Pride, cities often still hires them to basically act as glorified security guards, which can understandably put some people on edge. People of color, sex workers, and the like. Virtual events can also help people in rural areas that don't host any in-person events themselves. There are a plethora of people outside of the disabled community that can benefit from virtual Pride events, and they also deserve to celebrate Pride. Pride movie night sounds like Rocky Horror Picture Show midnight showing, just waiting to happen, and I love it. But yeah, honestly, I would love to do like Pride picnic, Pride movie night, that kind of stuff.
That would just be absolutely amazing.
Well, Fenos! There you are! I'm sorry, I'm getting to the answering emails. I was wondering where you were. It's okay, the videos will be made public on Wednesday. I'm sorry you're late. Um, so, I have 2 emails to read today. The first one reads, I think I might be autistic. I saw a couple posts about, well, Fenos, hygiene is important. Don't get upset for being late because you're taking a bath.
I honestly wish I could take a bath here. We don't have a bathtub that could A, fit us, and B, the water just.
Yeah, water isn't the greatest. Anyways, I'm going to start over. So, I have 2 emails to read today. The first one reads, I think I might be autistic. I saw a couple posts about it that challenged my understanding of what autism was. So I started to do more research to better understand and support the community. But as I was doing that research, I realized that I did stuff that are autistic traits. At first I thought it was just a couple traits, but it turns out it's a lot of them. Stimming, sensory issues, and trouble with social cues, to name a few. I told my therapist about it, and she shut me down without even listening to my reasoning. She wouldn't even hear me out. I'm scared to bring it up to my parents because I don't know how they will react. I'm scared to self-diagnose because what if I'm wrong and I'm not autistic? What if I am and suffer because I didn't tell anyone? If you read this, do you have any advice? First of all, for my advice, if you can, get a different therapist. If she won't even hear you out, she's not a good therapist. Secondly, don't be scared to self-diagnose. Even if you're wrong and you're not autistic, being part of the autistic community can help push you in the right direction of figuring out how you're neurodivergent. People who have self-diagnosed as autistic and later found out they weren't autistic at all, but they were ADHD or something, were helped by the autistic community to come to that realization. On the other hand, as you said, you may be right. Most self-diagnosed autistics who went for a diagnosis were diagnosed as autistic. You did the research and you identified with it. That's how a lot of people find out they're autistic. When it comes to your parents, I suggest that you do bring it up with them. Yes, they may shoot down the idea, but they may not. You'll never know if you don't try. Explain the research you've done, and even what autism truly is, since there are many people who still have outdated views about it. Tell them how you relate to autistic people and the traits that you share. In the end, I think it best you find yourself an autistic community to be a part of, whether in real life or online. Not getting diagnosed can shut the door to needed support, but having a community of like-minded people can at least help you feel accepted and welcome, which can do so much for your mental health. They may even be able to help you find a better therapist in your location. and give you more tips as to how to approach the topic to your parents. The second email reads, I'm having great difficulty in my country finding autism-informed doctors. My last and possibly final attempt to find a therapist to help me, especially with my complex PTSD, has led to her misdiagnosing me with borderline personality disorder after repeatedly admitting that she doesn't know anything about autism or PTSD, and going so far as telling me the 7+ doctors who confirmed my diagnosis over the years must be wrong because I can't be autistic since I make eye contact and have empathy. To help my husband understand meltdowns and emotional states of a person with autism a bit better, what advice would you give him? Oof. What is with all the terrible therapists? She sounds incredibly frustrating. There are so many autistic people who can maintain eye contact, and we do have empathy. The myth that we don't is so outdated. I don't know what gave her the gall to undiagnose you with something she admitted knowing nothing about. Sorry. I know that your question isn't about your therapist. It's just that it really irks me when they do this sort of thing. Anyways, my advice with helping your husband understand autistic people better would be to learn from autistic people. There are many autistic bloggers, YouTubers, and authors out there that have given a plethora of information on their experiences with being autistic. When it comes to autistic YouTubers, my two favorite are Neurodivergent Rebel and Peekaboo Peaches. Right now, the ball is in your husband's court. It's up to him to educate himself on autism from an autistic point of view. You can help guide him, of course, but he has to be willing to learn. Neurotypical people, even those who claim to be experts on autism, can only give so much insight on what it's like to be autistic. It's one thing to learn about autism. It's an entirely different thing to be autistic. I hope these answers help you. And if you want to ask me questions to answer my live stream, just send me an email. My email is in the description. And yes, doctors who don't listen are the actual worst. It took way too long for me to be diagnosed with endometriosis because of that. So, I, of course, will take this time to thank my patrons. The first, of course, being my dad, as always. Another thanks to Dominic, who was/is in the chat. I'm not sure if he's still around, but... And Tom, who has yet to get back to me, so I can't draw a picture of him, so... Mysterious Tom. All my $5 patrons, you are all awesome. Oh, Dominic is in chat. Hi, Dominic. And my $1 patrons. I had to, remake this, twice, because I keep getting so many $1 patrons. You're all so amazing. Thank you so much. Now, I'm just going to let you all know here. I am going to be taking July off. I am incredibly fatigued. Both me and my partner are.
It hasn't been the easiest year.
No, not for anyone. But yes, so I'm going to be taking July off. I am going to be announcing it publicly on July 1st. But yeah, I just need a break, and since my partner won't be working, um it's we can just relax together, you know? It'll be nice. But I will be back in August. And yeah. So yeah. Sorry my live streams aren't like an hour anymore. I know they used to be, but it's okay, Dominic. Um but yeah, it's just like I can only find so much information on certain things. But yeah. I'm not the fastest reader. I'm not the fastest typer. I've always sucked at essays. But yeah, anyways. Thank you all for coming. You are all awesome. Yeah, you cover this one.
Okay, yeah, it's not just end of the semester fatigue. I've been feeling fatigued since before the end of the first semester. Like, uh, with COVID, our school was severely short-staffed in person because I had to teach in person because I was here. Every time somebody was away who was a digital teacher, I had to cover for them. It's been changes after so much stuff added on with COVID stress because guess what? We weren't allowed to have a mask policy. Uh, so yeah, just I've been fatigued for months. It's been a wild ride, but it's almost over.
Yeah. Um Thank you, Emily. But yeah, yeah, we're probably not really gonna go anywhere. Probably mostly just a staycation. Sleep in, catch up with series, play video games. We just finished Castlevania. Oh my gosh, that ending, it was so good. I almost cried. Anyways, so thank you all for coming. I shall let you go for now. You all have a fantastic day, night, afternoon, whatever it is for you. You have a wonderful insert time of day here. All right. Bye.
Goodbye.